Want to ride faster without your heart rate racing out of control? World-class coaches like John Wakefield, Dan Lorang, and the legends of endurance training have cracked the code. And it's simpler than you think.
In this video, we will break down the proven strategies on how to train smarter, optimize your efficiency, and test your progress like the pros. Ready to unlock a little bit of free speed? Let's roll.
Anthony, let's get into this question. Anthony, I'm looking for some advice. I'm a 38-year-old male and I ride about 10 hours per week. I've been training for about 2 years on the bike. I played football until I found cycling through a work event and fell in love with it. I found a great cycling group and I'm going to race a bit this year. My question is around heart rate. I'm not sure, but it seems alarmingly high. I look at my bike computer and my heart rate never drops below 165 and spikes to the mid 180s when I'm climbing. Is this normal, and what can I do to work on getting this lower but keep my pace?
I think the climbing at 180s looks fine. It never drops below 165. Potentially not brilliant, but heart rate is so individual. So maybe instead of addressing specifically, because we don't know, 165 could be his, unlikely, but it could be his zone 2 if he's, 210. Like, I coach a lad and he's averaging like 190 on rides and he's super young. But let's, instead of addressing that specifically, give some overarching advice to people who want to ride faster and keep their heart rate low. I've broken this down into 3 steps, which I think are really easy to replicate, and almost anybody at any level can really get something from this. But I suppose an overarching principle is we're going for simplicity here over chasing magic bullets. I'm not going to tell you to check out the latest ketone or some really new sexy fad. This is about old school consistency. And with that said, I think there is 3 ways to really do this very well. The first one maybe isn't something you will expect, and it's fueling. So if we start to bump our fuel up considerably in the 80 to 100 grams of carbohydrates per hour, which is a lot for a lot of people listening to this podcast, proper fueling is going to keep your blood glucose stable, reducing reliance on glycogen breakdown and stress hormones like cortisol, which all spike the heart rate. So your heart rate's going to stay lower, like 120 or 130 BPM at a given power, say 280 watts, because you're not fighting energy deficits all the time. And research backs this up. Carb intake above 90 grams per hour can lower perceived effort and heart rate by 5 to 10% versus being underfueled, which is massive. Glycogen depletion forces your body to ramp up fat oxidation and glycogenesis, both really inefficient processes, and as a result your heart rate climbs like 10 to 20 BPM for the same wattage, as your system has to work harder to compensate, undermining that aerobic efficiency. So fueling at 90 to 100 grams per hour, it can really boost sustainable power by up to 50 watts. Some of the studies are showing like that's 10 to 20% improvement compared to underfueled athletes, while keeping heart rate 5 to 15 beats lower in some of these studies. I'll reference them in the description below. So that's step 1, I think, is a fueling part of this in kind of the 3-step formula that I've put together.
Which I think, as this listener has written in, he's only training for about 2 years. I would say that is part of it.
It took me 10 years to get fueling right.
Yeah, I agree.
Next up, I think it's actually old school. It's training, making sure you're training right. You're looking to build an aerobic base. There's some brilliant podcasts we've had on this. A couple that spring to mind: John Wakefield's conversation, he's a Red Bull coach, and Dan Lorang, another Red Bull coach. They're both on the channel and people can go and check them out. But the foundation that John Wakefield talks about is around 80% of your weekly training hours in zone 1 or zone 2. And if you're not sure what zone 1 or zone 2 is relative to yourself, you can jump over to our website and we have a free zone calculator over there. It's just roadmancycling.com/members. Totally free. You can download it, plug in your 20-minute test results, and it'll spit out either your heart rate zones or your power zones. You're going to need to do a 25-minute test if you're doing heart rate. Why do you care about riding around in zone 2? Like, what does this actually do? Well, we're looking to boost our mitochondria. They're like the powerhouses of our muscles. So we're trying to make our muscles better at using oxygen and fat for a fuel source. You've heard this idea of metabolic flexibility. Dan Lorang talks about that at length in the podcast I have with him. Now, you're talking to get these adaptations like longer endurance rides in the 3 to 5 hour range, steady, controlled, conversational pace. If you're only using perceived effort, it's like a 4 or a 5 out of 10 where you can chat to someone without being broken. Well, the remaining 20% of your training, so if you're 80% zone 1, zone 2, the remaining 20% of your training, you're starting to layer in intensity in a structured manner. You're looking to progressively overload your training week on week, 3 weeks build, 1 week decompression. We have a video we released about 2 weeks ago. It's a 7-day training plan, which really goes into details on that. And I think if this is something you're looking to explore, jump over and watch the 7-day video. I think we're going to expand on that and bring a 30-day video pretty soon, talking to people exactly how you can build a training plan. So if you've step 1 is your fueling, step 2 is training properly, and step 3, I think, is just being more aero on the bike. Because less drag means less effort at the same speed. Like you can dial in your position, moving around your bars, tighter tuck, sleeker helmet, tighter fitting clothes, aero socks. You could save 10 to 50 watts, depending on what your baseline is, quite easily. If you wanted to geek out further, we have knocking around somewhere, I think you have it over there, a gimbly aero sensor, which I haven't played around with it too much yet, but you're getting free speed for no extra heartbeats.
Yeah, I think, okay, reading this message and you're kind of saying, wow, 165 is quite high for somebody. I mean, when I started riding with the road band spin a couple of years ago, and up until really this entire winter that I did in zone 2 to try and bring that heart rate down and keep my pace but my heart rate down, I was definitely coming back from rides 3.5 hour spins. My average would be 165. So this is definitely something that people are, powering through.
It's like going to a bike race, I guess.
Yeah, it does. I mean,
but the group was too high a standard for where you were at
when
you were coming out on a group. And again, that's just people finding a suitable group for their level.
Yeah.
Like you shouldn't be pinned full gas all day in your group.
Yeah, I agree. Like I'm not really at the stage where I'm really focused on aero or those kind of gains, but absolutely eating and a rake of zone 1, zone 2 training has completely, it's turned around kind of where that super high heart rate is all of the time. So
I think that's a good point you made as well, where you're not at the stage. I think even though I presented those 3 sort of bullet points rather than 3 steps, I actually, with the benefit of you actually saying that, think you're right. There's a hierarchy to them that you should focus on: training first, fueling secondary, aero if you have the first 2 boxed off.
Yeah. I would actually turn that on its head and say
Maybe
fueling first, because I just don't think you're going to get the adaptations if you're not eating even when you're training.
That's a good point.
Yeah. Learn from the best.
I retract my prior statement. Listen to Sarah.
Okay, next question. Hi, Anthony and Sarah. I've got a mix of Shimano and SRAM parts on my bike, not by choice, just from upgrading over time. Am I losing efficiency by running a Frankenstein group set, or do modern components actually play well together?
It's not all about efficiency, is it? This is a bike that tells a story of miles and it tells a story of upgrades. It has personality. Shimano and SRAM kind of coexisting, living side by side, not by design, but by necessity. I think the big question he's trying to get answered is this mismatch and the kind of glorification and romanticization of it by me, is that just bleeding him efficiency? And he's actually the guy who wrote in about the 165 heart rate.
Yeah, he's like, I don't care about the history of the bike and, it's war, it's scars. I want to be fast. So is it hurting him?
Well, efficiency normally really boils down to your drivetrain. So you're looking at your chain, your cassette, your chain rings, and your derailleur. That's where the rubber meets the road. So if your Shimano and SRAM group sets are from a similar era, like they're both 11 speed or they're both 12 speed, they're cross compatible in most cases. Now, Shimano's Hyperglide and SRAM's X-Range use different tech, but the chain widths and cog spacings have kind of converged over time. So a Shimano chain on a SRAM cassette or vice versa usually shifts fine and rolls with minimum friction loss. I think less than 1 to 2 watt difference, according to a study I found on the friction facts. So you're not really losing the house on 1 to 2 watts. Like that's, lubing your chain or not, or cross chaining or not. Now, if your mix is wild, like you've got, an old school Dura Ace 9-speed and you're mixing it with a SRAM 12-speed, that's where things start get a little bit dicey. You're mismatching pulley ratios. That's like how much the cable from the derailleur moves per shift. That's where things can start getting sloppy with extra chain drag and even drop chains when you're trying to shift up little to small ring, especially you're, shifting over the back into the spokes and messy things like that.
Yeah, nothing as annoying as dropping chain.
I think the main thing is, which I always found on this, is mix matching brands often leads to uneven wear patterns. And uneven wear patterns get super annoying. So if you're using... I use all SRAM, so I change my SRAM chain and my SRAM cassette at the same time. But if you're using a Shimano chain and a SRAM cassette, one can wear faster than the other. Now you're on a new SRAM chain and an old cassette and nothing ever shifts right. If you're building it from scratch, it's definitely not something I would do. If you're remedying it, I would maybe think of, like, if your SRAM is your newest component, trying to get more SRAM stuff. Or maybe he has a personal preference.
Yeah. If someone rolls up to the group spinner, you're at a race, do you look at a bike like that and you're like, wow, that's an old war horse. That's been through a lot. I admire that. Or
not really, like.
Yeah.
No, I like people that look after their stuff, and if it's well maintained. Also, no one, like, it's rarely a desirable quality to see somebody who's just got into the sport and they spent 15 grand on all the newest stuff. You're kind of like, all of us feel a little bit like, you need to earn your stripes a small bit. But then as I get older, I'm totally soft in that position, going, you know what, there's worse things you can spend your money on. If it makes you happy and you have the cash for it, like, it's supporting the whole cycling economy, including this podcast. So it's like, yeah, go at it if it makes you feel good.
Yeah.
Better than a fare.
If it makes you
cheaper.
I wouldn't know. Okay, next question.
Hey everybody, let's take a quick break to talk about the bike I'll be riding this season, Reap. I've been lucky enough to ride all the top brands in the world over the past few years, but these Reap bikes, they're not the same, and I'll tell you why. Reap is the first company I've seen that isn't chasing sales targets and the mass market. They're chasing something very rare, perfection. Every bike they make, it's crafted in the UK factory, and it's not about slapping a Made in Britain label on a bike from a Chinese factory. It's about control. From the first sketch to the final build, they're hands-on, ensuring that every detail is dialed in. That's very rare in an outsourced world of mass production. What sets them apart is innovation. While others pump out the same old designs, Reap's pushing boundaries. They're not following trends, they're setting trends. Think precision and performance, like an F1 car for the road. Absolutely no compromises. And it shows, and you can feel it when you ride the bikes. These bikes are built for riders who demand the best, whether they're chasing podiums or just want a machine that feels like an extension of your body, a piece of art. It's not hype, it's substance. Ride a Reap for yourself and you're riding something crafted with intent. So if you're serious about cycling, check them out. It's reapbikes.com. I absolutely love my one and I couldn't recommend it highly enough. Back to the show.
Hey Anthony and Sarah. Pogačar hit the deck hard at Strade Bianchi, but then just dusted himself off and still rode away from everyone like it was nothing. How did the pros bounce back so fast, both mentally and physically, after a crash? And for us mere mortals, is there anything we can learn from how they handle these wipeouts?
Well, I guess, like, if you think about it, when you say us mere mortals, most of us riding a bike are like ages 30 to 50. So, like, call a spade. Middle-aged men in lycra is a tag for a reason. You're talking about a world-class athlete hitting the ground versus a 52-year-old dentist who took up sport 2 years ago and was sedentary for 20 years before that. They are different things. Like, you know, you got to think about muscle composition, bone density, flexibility. Like, they're not the same as you and me. They're world-class athletes. So physically, in the aftermath of the crash, it's something that you could tap into or I could tap into if we were motivated enough. He was fueled primarily by adrenaline to get back to the front of the bike race. I've often jumped up myself with bad injuries and got back on the bike, and it's only later on when you chill out, you realise, oh, that actually is very bad. I don't know how I got through that. But adrenaline, it's a powerful, powerful drug, and we get that natural release of it. He also is riding for UAE, one of the highest budget teams in the game. So they'll have a whole infrastructure in place behind the scenes to manage this, from physios to osteopaths to chiropractors to doctors to treat the wounds. So minimum chance of infection, minimum chance of injuries going undetected. So we just don't have that infrastructure normally to rely on. You can build that around yourself, but it's not a fair comparison if you're judging yourself crashing on your Sunday against Pogačar going, oh, he crashed and he was up the next day. I crashed and I'm still down for 2 weeks later. Mentally, the scar can be a little hard to get over sometimes. You've had a couple of crashes and it's slowed you down.
Yeah, it definitely sticks with you. It's just there in the back of your mind after you have a bit of a get down. None of mine were serious, thank God. But yeah, you're definitely a little bit more cautious. Well, for example, when I first started, I would be following you down to Sense, no problem. And, you know, newbie, yeah, all that newbie courage. And then after I came down a couple of times, my mind won't let me go as fast as you. It's just holds me back so much, you know, because you
understand the risks now.
Yeah, you understand, exactly. I think Pogačar is, as well as that, like, it's his job, but he's a very highly motivated and competitive person. And it didn't even cross his mind for a second to stay lying down on the ground that time. I don't think.
Never, like, these lads are doing this though since they're kids.
Yeah.
It's just instinct in bike riding. Put me back on my bike, sort it out at the finish.
Yeah.
That's not always an admirable quality, as we see.
Exactly.
Did Pogačar get any sort of concussion testing? Absolutely not. Like, did he hit his head? Questionable.
Yeah.
The bigger question.
I think he did.
Should Pidcock have waited?
Well, I mean, look, I'm not a huge fan of Pidcock. I read an article today by Sean Kelly who basically said that he thinks that Pidcock didn't wait, you know, because of the morality or because he's a sportsman. It was because Pogačar was hot on his heels and he was going to catch up on him anyway. Whereas Pidcock kind of came out and was like, oh, you know, I waited up for him because it's, you know, this sportsmanship kind of thing to do. But I call absolute bullshit on that. You made a good point, because I was like, well, Pidcock accelerated when he saw that Pogačar had crashed. And you were like, well, in fairness, I would do that too, because he doesn't know that Pogačar is going to get back on his bike and he's still trying to keep a lot of space between him and the chasers. At what point do you kind of sit up when, you know, you're hearing on the radio then Pogačar was chasing him and he got it down to about 13 seconds before Pidcock
when the gap comes
up.
down massively, you got to ride. When someone crashes, there's no point you sitting around waiting. Like, the brake's out there all day. That's the race winning move. You got to ride. Also, Connor Swift was there as well. So they both in distance. Pidcock solo. He has to ride, at least until he figures out what the situation is. And then if you want to play the sportsmanship card, you can sit up a little bit, but you're giving away that time back to the chasing group behind. So you need to be conscious that you are sitting up. I don't think Pidcock sat up. No. I think Pidcock realised the gap's gone from whatever it was, 20 seconds back to 13 seconds in like a kilometre. And he's like, I'm getting caught very fast. I may as well just sit up and chill for a second. I think the bigger question is, should Pidcock have ridden with Pogačar at all? Now, I'm not sure it changes the result if Pidcock doesn't ride with Pogačar. Like, he got second. But where this would get really interesting is, Pidcock rode with Pogačar. I think he rode with Pogačar because he has an ego, because he's arrogant and he thinks he's as good as Pogačar. He obviously isn't as good as Pogačar. Just look at the two Palmares. So he rides with him, thinking I can match you, gets dropped easy. Pogačar rides away. Pidcock holds on for second, which I think arguably paints over a bad decision to ride with him. If Pidcock gets caught by Tim Wellens and ends up getting third instead of second, it's obvious. Everybody goes, why would he ride with Pogačar? That was absolutely ridiculous. But because he didn't get caught, now the end justifies the means. I think it was a tactically poor decision to ride with Pogačar.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Good for spectators, though.
Great for spectators. And I think, look, he's new to the team. He's just moved to that team, 36.5. And he's probably, you know, who knows what management are saying to him, or what is in his ear. I mean, they want camera time. They
Oh,
want
it's
results.
a huge result. Make no mistake,
Massive.
like it's
Yeah.
a huge result
Massive.
for them. He's their marquee rider. They're a small team stepping up to this level. They're not going to the Tour de France this year. TV time, showing they have a rider who can stick it up to Pogačar. That's a massive result. Make no mistake for them.
Yeah, for them. Good investment by that team. So another thing that Sean Kelly covered in that article, it was really good. Everybody go and check it out in Cycling News. He does at one stage say that Pidcock was peeing into the air, which is not really a Sean Kelly. It's more like pissing into the air that he'd say. But what do you think about, and Sean covered it as well, Pogačar going to do Roubaix?
Is that confirmed?
No, but do you think he should do it?
I don't know. I haven't looked at the calendar. And can he win it? I don't know. Van der Poel will take a lot of beating in it. He's a good bike handler. I don't know. It really depends on how it sits with the rest of his calendar. I haven't looked at it.
Yeah, it was just that Kelly was kind of saying that essentially it's too dangerous given what happened in Strade Bianchi, that he thinks the likelihood of crashing and, you know, having that wrist break or something like we saw Vingegaard having, that kind of derailed his Tour de France. The risk is just too high, but it'd be so cool to see him on the cobbles, wouldn't it?
Yeah, for sure.
It would be. Okay, next question.
Roadman, whether you're a weekend warrior or a World Tour rider, the right tools can make all the difference. Enter 4i's Precision 3 Plus Power Meter, the latest innovation from 4i, designed to help you reach peak performance. The Precision 3 Plus Power Meter is a compact yet powerful unit. It weighs just 9 grams and it's packed with features that set it apart, including integration with Apple's Find My network, giving you the peace of mind by letting you track your power meter wherever it is. Plus, you've got up to 800 hours of battery life. We all know that accuracy is key, and 4i's delivers a groundbreaking plus or minus 1% accuracy thanks to their unique 3D strain gauge technology. For those seeking even more data, the Precision 3 Plus Pro Power Meter offers dual-sided power meter metrics, giving you detailed insights into pedaling efficiency, torque effectiveness, and left-right balance. 4i's offers versatile product options to suit your needs. Choose from ride-ready power meters with pre-installed units on Shimano cranks, or up for factory-installed power meter where you send in your crankset for a custom installation. Ready to elevate your cycling game? Trust 4i's Precision 3 Plus Power Meter. Precision, performance, and peace of mind all in one. Learn more by visiting 4iiii.com. That's 4iiii.com. I'm going to put that in the description down below.
Anthony, should I weave through traffic at lights and junctions, or should the whole group hold position in the lane like a car?
Hold position.
Yes. Do you always hold position when you're in a group?
In a group, yeah. In a group, unless it's a really high density traffic place where the group's going to be waiting for like 10 minutes and you can safely filter.
Yeah. When is it safe to filter though? That's the thing, isn't it? It's like,
well, if there's space on the left hand side, you don't want half the group jumping on the footpath and weaving around someone with buggies and stuff, or if there's a lane to the right where you can pass on the right hand side, not ideal. Like, you'll know the junctions if you regularly do it as well. There's one or two areas that spring to mind on our group ride where we kind of filter through, but in general, the bigger the group gets, it's okay in a group of 2, in a group of 4. If you're starting to talk about some of the big group rides in Dublin where you have 50, 60 people, it's chaos.
yeah.
So you can't do it then it's just whole position.
Well,
and pick a better route.
But also pick a better route, but also doesn't make sense to, you know, half of the people are weaving through and then half are kind of behind, and then
But
the group
this should never happen though. This is like something that really annoys me. It's like the people on the front of the group, they make the decision for the group. Each person doesn't independently go, okay, should we go through this junction or should we not? The person on the front has responsibility for that.
Yeah. Okay. Agreed. Next question. Anthony, winter roads destroy my bike and the petrol station power wash is a quick fix.
I feel like a lot of these are you writing in, Sarah.
Is it a necessary evil, or should I be taking the time for a proper at-home clean? I've heard that blasting a SRAM group set with a power washer is asking for trouble. Is this just an old school myth, or do I really need to be careful? I do wash my bike down in the petrol station, the car wash, because we're in an apartment. It's just I stick it in the shower sometimes, but the oil clogs up the shower. Anthony gives out to me. He's in there scrubbing the shower, then trying to get the oil out of it. And so once a week, usually on my easy day, I cycle down to the petrol station or I cycle home that way and wash my bike and I give it a proper blast. What actually happened to me the last time was I got back on the bike and my power meter wouldn't work. So it's definitely, I don't think I'll be doing that again. It's just like the risk doesn't seem...
When you say your power meter, you mean my power meter.
I don't know. I think a lot can go wrong. And I know that when we have an amazing bike mechanic, Stephen, and I've given my bike to him on a few occasions and he's like, Sarah, please stop using the power washer because it's messing up the bearings, it's messing up, your jockey wheel, all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, even though I do it, I don't think it's very good for your bike, is it?
It's a choice of two evils, I think, because a lot of the roads, Dublin isn't as developed as most Western countries. Through winter, most roads, they have temperatures down as low as ours, which are minus single digits. They use a lot of salt for grip on the road. And salt really corrodes aluminium and steel. So you can think like your frame, dropouts, bolts, hangers, all those type bits. The grit really gets down into the chain, it gets down into the cog, and it's a bad dose. So that's the evil on one hand, and then we have the pressure washer on the other hand. And I was looking up the PSI because I knew you use pressure washers. They're 1,200 to 2,000 PSI. Yeah. The petrol station pressure washers are blown out.
And I think there's probably a proper way of using them. Like you don't have to put that whole 1,200 PSI right up close to your cassette, but I do because it's just the most effective way of doing it, the quickest way.
The challenge is the water forces past the sealed bearing, so it gets into the headset, the bottom bracket, the hubs, and then it sits there, it rusts there, it dilutes grease in there. Cyclone Weekly tested power washed bearings and they said they lost 20% of their lifespan versus hand cleaned ones. But then again, it's balancing the two evils. Does the salt from the roads, is it worse than 20%? But you can get pressure washers that have lower pressure. I think Muck-Off make one, but you need to plug it in and we don't have external
You can definitely get the ones that I've seen people at races, and particularly if I got a mountain biker in, that everyone that mountain bikes has these in their car and they just wash the bikes.
Everyone except us seems to have them.
Everyone except us. But I don't know. I'm still going to go to the petrol station power washer and try to be a little bit more careful around the components, I think.
I actually heard, someone might put in the comments, I heard contraption you can screw on to the top of the petrol station power washer to reduce the pressure for if you're cleaning your bike with it.
But like you can just stand a little bit further away from your bike, no? Like does it need a contraption? My point is that I probably will keep on going because I hate having a dirty bike. And, when you show up to a group ride and your bike is dirty, I feel absolutely mortified.
You look smelly.
You look grubby, don't you? Okay, well, time for another question?
Go on, Moria. Roadman, a brief interruption. Summer is coming and let's be honest, we all want to be out on the roads riding our bikes, and Rouvy gets that. That's why they've built in smart benefits to make sure you're only paying for indoor training when you're actually riding indoors. A common sense company. Instead of cancelling, just pause your subscription for up to 180 days a year and you'll keep your account. You even get 20 kilometers free each month. And you can grab a daily pass whenever you need it. Ride outside all summer and then jump back in when the weather turns again. And if you want the best value for money, a yearly plan saves you 16% and you still get the flexibility to pause or split the cost with a duo or group plan, because let's face it, suffering through intervals, it's always better when you rope a mate into it. And the longer you stick around with Rouvy, the cheaper it gets. Stay subscribed and you could save up to 24% off your plan. Train when it suits you, save while you do it. Head over to rouvy.com and use the code ROADMAN1M for 1 month free. That's ROADMAN, numerical 1, and then M for Michael for 1 month free.
Okay, hey Roadman, when passing another group ride, should we call it out? Should we gradually roll past or just fly by like we're trying to humiliate them? No, I'm kidding about humiliating them. But what are the rules? We've passed groups before and gotten an earful for not warning them.
I don't know.
You never say anything, do you? I don't think I do.
I think I just be polite. Like,
I don't know.
Say hello. How's
Say
your day
hello.
going?
Say hello. Exactly. I do think that.
I say you're going far. You're
Are you
doing much. You're doing much.
I think if you are passing by, they're probably not listening. Cycling as a group, you know, you're kind of in a group where you can hear cars behind you, you're aware of cars coming up behind you, and you're passing a group. Could you maybe put them off their stride or
Well,
make
the worst
them a
thing
bit
is,
nervous
so if you say it quiet,
sneak
they're
up
not
on
going to
them?
hear you. If
Yeah.
you say it too loud, you're going to scare the shit out of them.
Right.
So the effect is you're rolling past and screaming at them, which
Yeah.
just seems like it's terrifying and unnecessary. So no, go
How about,
quietly
like,
and wave.
How about if you're not going to like this, but how about you freewheel for a minute, get that nice free
Freewheel
hub,
in the
so,
group.
the free
if you're
hub
on the
sign.
front of the group and you freewheel, you'll get executed. So that you know. Or you drink a water bottle or you freewheel on the front of a group ride.
Or you talk.
You're going to bullet
You
in the
don't
side
like
of the brain.
You don't like talking
I
either.
just don't like talking to you on the group ride.
Charming.
Okay, we'll wrap this one up on that low point. Roman, thanks for tuning in to another rider support. There's another video up here which you will love. The podcast grows by sharing it with the cycling community. So please take a second, and if you enjoyed it, share it into your club WhatsApp group. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel. That's just down here. Thanks for chatting. Talk to you next day.